Bangs don't look at
Hello, everyone. Once again I apologize for our abrupt openings and closings. We are going
We're
to work
figuring it out.
as long. I'm a middle-aged man, and technology is a challenge. I'm with the lovely and talented Robyn, who is going to open us up with the oh god, Trump's mob rally last night, where he
Well,
promised.
apparently we're going to have a race war. That appears to be what is going on here. Not a
Yes,
great time.
he accused the prosecutors of being racist for, I believe, trying to prosecute white,
Him, a white person.
which is how racism works. Um,
Yes. Because, they just really over prosecute white people for all of the crimes, really.
yes. So he does this. He's always done this. It's kind of standard, and it
Yeah.
is, it seems. I should have stepped back. We know you have to take time and do everything that probably the case, but he just seems. I just kind of. I almost should we get. I mean, dig Rummy, Doug Rumsfeld, like get some people who are kind of like just dig up Colin Powell, like get some whatever we need to do a rush job of invading Mar-a-Lago, which is actually where the problem is.
I
And
did
like,
not see where you were going with that.
and
But,
actually, like I feel like I get everything about taking our time. We should have taken our time with Iraq. That should have been
mhm.
a 5-year, 6-year process before we did anything. But here it's like there's like he's a literal national security threat, and
Mhm.
you're the clock is ticking. So
Yeah.
he's gonna be more
He's
empowered.
literally the thing that I thought was really kind of important is the fact that he's saying that he's going to pardon all the January 6th people,
Mhm.
and then saying if I don't get my way, people are gonna be
Yes.
doing these giant protests, and he's basically saying do what you want, I'm gonna be president again and pardon you for whatever
Yeah.
crimes
Yeah.
you commit in
He,
my name.
it seems, Robyn, that he has not learned his lesson, as
Mhm.
Susan Collins thought he might. It basically the challenge here is that he nothing really impacted him
Yeah.
negatively from January 1st. He certainly feels, but he's always been paranoid. Like his act of he's not some master strategist. He's a thug. Like
He's
when he felt like
actively paranoid,
commies
but
were
he's
coming after him,
also
whatever.
super excited about people being loyal to him, really,
Oh, absolutely.
and
And
like
he's more dangerous because people die, like he saw people dying for him, and as it's been
yeah.
documented, he got off on people essentially storming the Capitol on his behalf. So you're right. Like, I mean, an issue I'd always had with the how the Department of Justice was treating and I get, and I chatted. You were out when I was chatting with Jamie about this. Like, I get the
Mhm.
idea of obviously how we should treat these folks. We shouldn't, Guantanamo Bay them and everything. But the problem is they're cultists, right? Or
Yeah.
they believe. I mean, we're seeing people. I was writing about this about the guy who died for refusing to get vaccinated in Washington. There, people are willing to die, just
Yeah.
not in that area, but here they're willing to die for this cause. So when you're
Oh
up
yeah.
against that, like treating it like a traffic ticket is not particularly a deterrent. It just means that I'm going to get out. I'm going to do the same thing. Of course, I'll
Yeah.
do a year for Trump. And now he's saying, I will proactively pardon you. And he has evidence of this because he left. He pardoned a lot of his cronies and so forth. So there's evidence of like, okay, whatever we do. So he has this army that's out
Mhm.
there. And when he says, like, if anyone tries to come after me, your leader, he's undermined any sort of
Yeah.
it's the law or whatever. If they come after me, go after them. And he's never been held accountable for the elections officials, everyone whose lives have been threatened. Despite everyone bringing up Maxine Waters, there was not a rush of people coming up to random people at restaurants going, boop, you know, there was nothing, nothing like what
No, I mean
being
nothing
done.
if we don't get our way, we're going to overthrow the nation. One thing that I will say, RE, the lockups and everything, is that a Hamilton mug? Oh no, it's not. Sorry.
It is Seize the Day.
It
is my mother-in-law's Piney Beach.
I like it. I like it. It's you. I'm clearly Canadian here because I'm living in the year 1997 and it's great. So here's the thing that bothers me enormously about this whole thing in a very petty way is that, we right after Trump said that about pardoning people and, oh, they're so unfair, is he starts talking about, like, very briefly, the prison conditions. And I mean, prisons and like city jails in this country are horrible. And like, I feel a little bit mad that the thing that got people to like pay attention to the DC jail being terrible was Marjorie Taylor Greene doing her tour. And they, the DC rioters were not even in like the actual bad part of the prison. They're not. That is reserved for, poor people. And it drives me, it just really does get under my skin that, like, maybe Democrats should be the ones doing tours of prisons saying, like, hey, this is what's happening here, and it is bad.
And Trump's full of shit, Green's full of shit. They would happily have any Black Lives Matter protester.
Oh, absolutely. And they love it. Like
they loved what was happening to the terrorists in Guantanamo Bay. I mean, they are fundamentally, Trump's whole thing is for my friends every day, for my enemies the law, as the old saying goes. So, but to your point, I think because Democrats have been historically timid of looking soft on crime, that's when we get, Clinton flying in for a long
and I think that they're not afraid of doing that.
But yes, essentially what happens is, and people will say, oh, that's BS, so it doesn't matter. But the problem is there are people, I would say, again, non-ideologically inclined. We're not supposed to imagine there are swing voters in this country, but there are who don't really pay much attention. Let's say those. It's not even like, because I think we focus a lot on suburban white moderates. There are just like the quote unquote average guys, the Joe Rogans, the so forth. Yeah. And I'm not saying like ignore their other awfulness or anything, or cater to them or alter your platform. The problem is those are folks who would get it, right?
Yeah.
So when we're trying to appeal to Rick Wilson or Tom Nickel, the respectable former Republicans, that's what we're most, okay, well then of course we can't have, God forbid, anyone, a Black woman or Cori Bush or Kamala Harris talking about bad prison conditions for even rioters, and basically say, because it wasn't like Republicans saying these guys didn't do anything wrong. It was like, even though they were rioting, they should not be in these conditions. And to me, it's a repeat of what Trump did again with Occupy Wall Street. There's those folks who flipped from Obama in 2012 to Trump. A lot of them were like, I've been screwed, I've been ripped off, and he came out and did something about it. And just the one,
he really didn't do anything about it. He just like sort of like pretended like he was going to do something about it, and dragged Clinton for her support of NAFTA and TPP. And I understand Democrats, a lot of centrist Democrats really want to pretend that no one is mad at that at forever, and that's, or that
but Democrats have never, no one ever wins based on everything's okay. Like not even conservatives. This idea that conservatives are going to win on everything. The goal is usually to have everything sucks, but here's the positive spin. So, Reagan had Morning in America, but the idea is that look at how terrible the country is. Morning is coming. It's theoretically optimistic. Same with Hope and Change with Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow with Clinton. But I was watching an old, because I'm a geek, I was watching an old clip of Sandra Bernhard on Arsenio Hall in 1992, and she's kind of railing against I love this woman, but she's railing against like how clueless Bush was, saying that everything's okay. It's like people are dying of AIDS. This is what's going on. How do people? And she's angry. And obviously, I know she's a liberal, but you could take her and put her out and have her. She could be a MAGA person now, talking about people dying, or even frankly a liberal, because I think Biden's losing some liberals on COVID as well. Like, people are dying from this. There's poverty. There's this. Everything's going wrong. This guy's clueless to say. This old guy is clueless to say everything's all right. And that is a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge, obviously, when you have. So when you are in power, generally speaking, the best way to maintain it is to effectively change enough that people don't have that anger. But when there's anger, they're going to turn on you. And that's what we're seeing right now. And Trump is with his Save America.
And he's taking advantage of that. The thing that scares me is that, like, there are, the recent polls saying that, like, there's now a majority of the country that considers themselves a Republican, which is not usual. Like, in general history, Republicans are usually a minority in terms of like population. And that should really scare us. And I think, there's a tendency among Democrats to like blame voters rather than politicians. And I feel like if there's one thing to steal from Trump, act like your voters are wonderful. Like, he acts like the people who vote for him are the absolute best human beings on earth, couldn't possibly ever do anything wrong. And people like that. They do. Like,
well, there's been, does not show the common theme has been for Democrats to say and even Republicans during the primary, he's a con artist. He's laughing at you. The Lincoln Project folks still say that. He's laughing at you. He thinks you're, but Tom Nichols was one of the most arrogant people alive and has nothing but contempt for, non-educated people. Saying this, of course, false. The average person who thinks he's more who believes is more condescending to them. Tom Nichols, your Jeopardy guy, or Steve Schmidt, or Donald Trump, who in the moment effectively says, I'm not better than you. You're one of me. I represent you. It's all of us, us. That message is penetrating, and Democrats have trouble replicating that. I mean, which
is disappointing, because like the actual, like, in terms of like actual platforms and everything, we should have an advantage with that.
Well, the idea is that we are vote suppressors for criticizing Democrats, except unless you're a centrist like Carville and others criticizing the left and blaming the left for any problem that's happening. But ultimately, generally speaking, we're not in a good place. Like, how do you get to the point where Republicans are, as you said, gaining more people identifying as Republicans? Most of those Republicans don't believe the 2020 election was
and will not, in fact, vote for someone who believes that the 2020 election was fair. Like, only 17% of them would vote for someone who said the 2020 election was legitimate.
Republicans have effectively fixed Arizona and Georgia, and I know that there's we can talk to our special guest next week about this. I know there's a sense of saying vote harder, but the goal was to effectively, when you're talking about a 10,000 vote margin, we've knocked enough of those people off the voter rolls. We've done enough of that. And of course, with the normal headwinds versus 22, that they've essentially taken those out of play. So we are against the 8 ball. How do we fix this? Is it a communication, or is this change? And again, people are receptive to people saying we're in bad shape, like Virginia happened. It was incredible. But the problem is just, and I've been in that scenario. I've worked in corporate. If you've ever worked in a TV executive, whatever. The idea is like when people everything's on fire. I will admit that's on fire. The problem is everything that the solutions to everything we're doing more of that, and anything I didn't want to do, let's do less of that. And that's the problem. There's no sense of we really need to fundamentally alter what we're doing. I mean, it's we still have doubling down on the same leadership, doubling down on, there's a lot of, and the Republican Party is much more ruthless in certain ways. I mean, it's fascinating. So I don't know. It's a slight tangent from this, but
Yeah.
I think I was thinking of writing about, because it was amusing. I found it, and I was either reading one of your pieces or another. I'd written about how they tried to have the GOP. This is from McCarthy and others. Tried to have a squad.
Yeah.
Good, these were all good Republicans. They were like women of color, like a woman of Asian descent, a
Yeah.
woman from Cuba, probably Nancy Mace. It was like this very cultivated new squad that would challenge the old squad, the GOP's squad, and it was like, and none of them. I cannot find anything.
No.
No one's remembered.
I actually completely forgot that was even a thing.
Oh, no, you would not know the names of any of these women, or I think there was one man. You don't know any of them. The power brokers who seized the power, seized the control, is the embarrassing Republicans, right? So Getz, that's to avoid state charges, federal charges, he could be pardoned. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is very powerful. We saw his J.D. Vance cuddling up to Lauren Boebert. So those folks have very effectively gained power within the GOP, even though the GOP is that's not what they wanted. So their own, but they at the same time very quickly like, oh, well, the folks with power, all right, we'll follow those with power. We have no problem with that. I think so the spontaneous movements, they're like, okay, well, yeah, Greene's embarrassing, but maybe not too embarrassing. And she's it's this YouTuber I follow, Steve Shives, who he does a lot of Star Trek, so you're not being following, but he was writing about Saturday Night Live. He had one about how terrible it was, which I found, it was one of those things where if you watch, you will realize, oh yeah, that is what they do, and it's awful.
Yeah.
But was talking about how toothless their satire often is. So if you would watch, where whatever they do, they have a sense of, because satire takes a side. It doesn't mean that you have to be overtly pro-Republican or overtly pro-Democrat, because that's not really taking a side.
You just have to have a strong point of view in some direction.
Yes. And so their sense of satire would be for like the impeachment, was when he was talking about this, was, oh, we're going to make fun of Democrats for not having made the impeachment entertaining enough. And then, their sense of satirizing terrible people is often just to kind of, do sitcom buffoonery of them, or it's impossible to make it more absurd. So it actually is less interesting than Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she herself, like, you'd almost have to do
you cannot top that.
Yeah. So, but often the satire, and I've seen this from folks, where the criticism is like, oh, well, she's, and I hate the term white trash, or she's like a redneck, or she's just things. It's very classist, right? And Saturday Night Live can be very classist, but it's very classist as opposed to, well, okay, well, she's very effectively accumulated power.
Yeah.
From a very, like, the Marjorie Taylor Greene movie that begins with, her, like, it's like Taxi Driver, right? Like, she's in or whatever, she's following around David Hogg. So starting from stalking this guy, stalking the AOC, and now she's, potentially a shadow part of GOP leadership. It's like, I'm very excited by this endorsement means as much. I think for J.D. Vance, he knows this endorsement from her means as much as one from Trump. Nancy Mace, that endorsement would mean nothing. Even Elise Stefanik, actual GOP leadership, would mean nothing. So, because
it's not what the people want. And the people want, sorry, like, I just get distracted. What the people want is, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And the thing is that, people are inclined to be like, oh, well, she's an idiot. However, all of these people who are, idiot conspiracy theorists are also, like, very much contributing to the, like, classic evil Republican schemes. Like, you know, and the thing I wrote yesterday, all of the crying over masks and critical race theory, and all of a sudden they're like very upset about a book Toni Morrison wrote in 1987. Like that's off the list now. And it's all very, very coordinated to undermine like faith in public schools, because they don't want public schools to exist, because they want people to be able to profit off of education. And that's what it comes down to. All of these people who are like, they're useful idiots.
Oh yeah.
Basically. They're still accomplishing these goals, but they're doing it in a way that they're bringing people in. And a lot of those people have no idea what their actual like agenda is. And I would say even the true believer, like I would consider Green and Bobart to be like true believers. And I don't think even they are like aware of like Alex machinations and whatnot. Like they're not.
And I was saying I was glad you'd written about this, because not that I have a particularly clever point of view, but I had been making similar comments about the public education attacks for a while. And I remember someone on Twitter responding almost matter-of-factly of like, public education is so important and that's going to backfire on them. That's sort of a democratic idea that we won't have to actually do anything. It's sort of like reading
things are just going to backfire.
He doesn't have to do anything. Lex Luthor's he's got a death machine. He's been building that death machine for a while. Clark, you want to do something? You might want to change the Superman. No, you're fine. It'll backfire. And then he builds it in the 5th issue and it blows up. And he's like, whew.
People are going to hate that. Like,
that's not how it works. You need this person's building a Death Star. You want to do something. It's like, nah, it'll backfire. But
like,
I mean, the point I would have made of that is this is a very clear of, as you said, these Republicans we don't get to go to brunch. We don't get the long weekend. Whenever we're dancing in the streets, Republicans are, like supervillains planning the next move, like burying out of the state, so they clearly, as you said, the end of to get rid of public education, the combination of the critical race theory panic, which was occurring and then got escalated.
And it got ramped up because, we've got like the Heritage Foundation and the American Legislative Exchange Council both like producing all these things like, what's really scary is critical race theory. And what's also bad is public education, because that's where they're learning it.
And the school closures. So during COVID, there was a lot of frustration with school closures, a lot of frustration with the unions. And they said, well, here's an opening. We can get people who might not have been on our side, but they're pissed. And a lot of our response was to, these Karens don't want to take care of their own kids. Again, yelling at voters. So it's like, you're bad. And
it's bad that you're not recognizing that you are bad. Like,
which is not a response. Like it's like, and the bad guys are coming to you. You're a smart woman, but if I'm just telling you you're bad, you're stupid, now vote for me. And the bad person's like, Robyn, you're wonderful and really smart, intelligent, and however you're angry, I'm there for you. Let's go.
Part of Bill Clinton's shit, and people made fun of it, was that I feel your pain.
Exactly.
And feel some pain. Feel some other people's pain. Like, and I feel like there's this, that song, like, I'm living in a different decade right now. Like the Mr. Big song, Just to Be the Next to Be With You. I sort of feel like that's what is going on here. Like eventually the Republicans are going to get too crazy and we're just going to sit here and like collect, and everyone's going to come to us. We just have to wait in that line.
That was my senior year. So either 91 or 92. I think it was 91.
I'm trying to tell that guy's hair right now.
It was one of those black and white videos, so you knew it was really intense.
It was deep.
Deep.
He was feeling it. But
that was, but yeah, I mean, I've
been hearing that the Republican Party is going to get too crazy and people are just going to go over the Democrats since Bush, at least. Like, he's going to pronounce nuclear Like he's gonna say nuclear one too many times, and people are just they're gonna understand what is up, and they're gonna flock to us, people who pronounce things correctly.
Well, don't you sound, I mean, it makes Democrats sound like climate change denialists, right? Like, isn't that the rhetoric? Which is, it'll cool, the world will cool down. We don't need to do anything uncomfortable to affect change, to address what's happening. It'll just work its way out. That's how Republicans respond to climate change. And it does feel like sort of electoral denialism within the Democratic leadership that they eventually, democracy is at stake. And even though the voters clearly you've not effectively communicated, thank you, Sinema and Manchin, you have not effectively communicated these guys are dangerous or deadly, so you're getting your butts handed to you. And for Carville, who's like, he has the same, his own prescription, it's like literally, he's like just asking for more cowbell, right? He's saying more of the 1992 stuff, like people who write about the Sister Soldier moment, like beat up on a Black woman, do this, like all the stuff that doesn't work. And to your point about feeling your pain, what Carville, the intervention that someone like Carville needs is to be placed in front of that debate moment with Clinton and Bush, where Clinton connects with the Black lady in the audience, talks about like when people, you know, I live in a small state, when people lose their jobs, good chance I know their names, like, you know, and Bush just giving homilies or whatever. And about, I can, you know, let's make things work and do this sort of stuff that unfortunately we sometimes hear from Democrats. And it's like, you need to take the blinders off, take the labels off, and see that right now a lot of Republicans are sounding like Clinton, even though they're evil. They're sounding more like Clinton, and you're sounding more like George H.W. Bush in 1992, whereas Sandra Bernhard and others are like, what's with this guy? Is he drunk? Like, why is he thinking everything's hunky-dory? It's not. And that is how you kind of move forward. But it's just, I get it. I get the idea of wanting to believe that Virginia happened not because of critical race theory, because that's all astroturf. That just so pisses me off whenever generally speaking, I forgive our viewers on this. Inevitably, you've written sometimes ages ago, even before I started at Wonkette, you're writing about QAnon and others, and inevitably there'd be some comment about, who cares? This is no thing. Oh, Robyn, this is just astroturf. This isn't a real thing. And it's
like,
it's just like a real.
I don't know who these people are because I'm deep.
Yes, he sound like sounding like someone who doesn't watch television or has no recognition of pop
I don't even own a TV. Like,
like
everyone thinks I don't even own a TV, people.
That makes you an asshole, right? Like,
I feel like the Democrats are like very much like betting on people finding I don't even own a TV, people to be really way more appealing than they are. You know, like it's just very like.
That is not an electorate.
It's not. Like, you have to be able to connect with people. And I feel like we're getting to the point where like the list of people who are bad and stupid and unacceptable is like the vast majority of the population. Like it's so many people. Like, you know, if you go by like, you know, the people who are like, we're the true blue, we're the adults in the room, we're the real Democrats, there's like 2,000 of them, and they're like, it's just us, we're the only acceptable ones. And everyone just needs to go along with us because we're right about everything, and people will understand that.
And then why didn't you vote for me? I insulted you all this time and say I didn't need you, and you're embarrassing. And why didn't you vote for America and democracy?
Yeah.
Which, you know, look, you can try to argue there's some sort of civic, which doesn't work. I mean, that's not how elections work. But even if you want to die on that hill, you aren't walking that walk because you spend most of your time trying to appeal to suburban white ladies in the hockey every time. And so the white lady, the hockey mom, opposed to the Black lady in Harlem, works as an elevator operator or whatever, you expect her to stand in line for hours and vote because democracy is at stake. And that's the important thing. but the
But the
suburban.
people who are getting what they want are those soccer moms in the suburbs.
Well, but look, oh my God, if we scare her too much with Liz Warren, or if we even mention healthcare, she'll vote for Trump. It's like, well, he's the fascist. You've been saying that. So is she a fascist? Well, don't call her racist or mean. That'll make her. So okay, well, what is your point here? And what happened in Virginia was those folks, you have a very tenuous, what was revealed was that Republicans have a very secure coalition that will turn. This is the recipe. And Democrats, if you look at our victories since, and essentially after Obama, there was the white working class, quote unquote, completing that departure from Democrats that happened. So states that Obama won now seem so far out of reach, like Ohio, even Indiana in 2008. And so, but our victories in 2018 and 2020 are often like rooted in rejection of Trump from these suburban white folks, and who Democrats have been chasing as they were losing the working class. And, I'd warned even then in 2016, 2015, it's like, okay, well, yes, a lot of those guys are deplorables. I agree 100%. But as you're chasing after the Tom Nichols, and I use this example, sorry, I mean, I'm against this guy, but this idea that people you're trying to embrace, these are they are part of, you're essentially becoming good Republicans. Yeah. And what happens is you wind up losing. Why do you believe that working class people of any race would support you? Yes, some of those working class people, white people, who are flooding the
They're
Trump.
not like, what I really need is a Rockefeller Republican. Like,
yeah, some of them were flooding because they're racist, and we can't get them back. As long as the woman on the ticket who's a feminist, they're not. I get that, but a lot of them are, and even if all of them were, enough culturally, you are making it impossible. You don't sound like, to me, it's like, okay, who's the Republican base? If I want to reach that base, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, those are those people. They live that world. They live that life. They are so connected to them. Pull them out, they can reach them. And then instead, it's like, okay, to reach these, Black folks in a barbershop or beauty parlor, we have so many layers till you get to like Sheldon Whitehouse. Really, like, so there's a communication breakdown. So in politics, it's just, and there's this assumption that, well, our audience we can always have. We can never lose this audience. So it's the idea that Republicans are like CBS. It's like, okay, all old folks and white folks, and we're MTV, right? We'll have young people and whatever forever. And then, now everyone on your board is 90 years old.
Yeah.
And disconnected from
all of the, everyone else is embarrassing.
And everyone at CBS has actually been hiring pretty younger people. Have you seen these programs recently? No. CBS is just, no, that show you mentioned was from 30 years ago. Do you understand what's happening? While MTV is like, and then this eventually occurs. So the danger is twofold. This whole youth movement is coming in the Democratic Party, the sense of the outsiders, its connections, our leadership, we're the other folks who can get stuff done. Like Nancy Pelosi. Okay, well, power is how you get things done. And the sense of power is such of like this. These are the people who can speak to those voters, who are our people who can speak to those voters. We are scared of having people. So we keep losing Latino voters. I think we talked about this. There was a poll in Florida where Biden was underwater with Latino voters, and a gentleman, like a Democratic strategist, like, bad poll. Don't believe that. It's like, it's feasible. Why wouldn't it? Especially among Latino men. Why do you not imagine that's occurring? Chasing the Bulwark gang might be losing. It's just like you're programming.
And the thing is that, there was a lot of people who were very, very upset at, the Latino population in a lot of states because they were going for Bernie, and they were like, this is bad. Why don't you understand that this is bad for you? You need to not be doing this. But then at the same time, they were like, well, the Cubans who have been Republicans forever, they're going to vote for Joe Biden. That's who's like, we have to arrange our entire electoral strategy on the people who are still mad that they're not rich in Cuba anymore. Like the pro Batista contingent. Like that's who we're going for. Gotta tailor everything to them. And they're never going to vote for you.
And
the actual other like
yeah, I was not the same during the primary, but when he's winning those he was doing very well with Latinos, more so than Biden in certain key states. And I felt like that is a warning bell. And I felt like we kept getting these warning bells that because they came from Biden, it was sort of like it's like, well, it's like, to me, it's like foreshadowing in a movie. Well, this is foreshadowing, sort of like his surprise win in Michigan. It's like, okay, well, maybe we should reset. No reset. It's like, okay, well, he's doing that. Like it's so with Hispanic voters. I hate to use this very broad term. It's kind of annoying and racist, but you're talking about a group of people who, just democratically speaking, do not have a historical connection to the Democratic Party. It's not like their parents voted for it, whatever voted for it. So they're kind of up for grabs. And if you're not communicating with them, yes, why would you think a Hispanic male between this age range would drastically vote differently than a white guy at his same goddamn job in his same goddamn neighborhood? Why? Other than, like, again, with Black people, it's like, we're there for you. Democrat Party's been there for you. It's historically there for you. I got to go tell my auntie that I'm voting for a Republican, and like, what? Like, it's like, what, honey? What are you doing? There's an historical connection. Even that is eroding because it's getting harder to. And this was like a big, like, we tried voting rights and whatever, but again, Black people can feel as if, oh, we came out in droves and got these two folks elected and in Georgia, and that somehow made Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema Lord Gods powerful, and they seem to be they don't even thank us. They have no interest in, like, there's no other. And so when you look at Josh Hawley saying, well, I can't tell these people who put me in the office that they're wrong about the election being stolen, but yet these people who have all this power because of Black voters who are saying this is happening to us, from police reform to here, you have Democrats telling them, well, these white people who might or might not vote for me, I got to listen to them. We're not going to do anything. We can't scare people with doing anything about police reform. And we can't necessarily nuke the filibuster to do anything about your voting rights. Just vote harder. We'll be there for you.
The Republicans did a better job at turning people against freaking police officers. Like, they have done a better job at that. Like, with the Capitol police officers, like, they just steamroll right on through.
Well, they're not afraid. I mean, yes, some of it is racism, but you've got to figure out how to get past that. So, despite Val Demings, the idea is like that's a slam dunk, right? She's law and order. She's a police officer, and she was, so up her against Rubio will be but Rubio's gonna potentially crush her based on. I mean, come on, like, statistically speaking, it seems highly unlikely that. I mean, and he's getting endorsements from pretty much every sheriff in Florida, despite everything, despite this. So either it's hopeless, either it's just racism, and whatever Republicans could, like, ritually set cops on fire and still then say, oh, well, look, that Democrat said, then that's enough. Like, well, that Democrat said something about reform, and maybe you shouldn't kill Black people on the street, and then that scares everyone into neutral corners. And either it's hopeless.
And I keep saying this. What it is that, like, Republicans are willing to, like, see it through. They're willing to try and pull it off. And Democrats are, like, more likely to be like, oh, we said the wrong thing. Like, oh no, that's like, we know we're bad. We're sorry. We did not mean to do that. I find it super ironic personally that, like, the people who are most likely to be upset about defunding oh no, you can't defund the police. You can't defund the police. Like, they're always the exact same people, always across the board, who are like, we can't fund healthcare. That would be insane. What are you, a communist? But like, they're like, oh, tax dollars should definitely go towards the police, who aren't actually obligated to save anyone's life. Like,
well, you've got to keep
I
the
actually
cops
feel
happy.
like Democrats could feasibly, if they just like followed it through and stopped trying to like, mitigate their words, get people angry at the police.
Oh yeah.
And use that.
Instead, they will probably try to recruit even some of those Capitol Police officers, right? Fanone and some of the others, to run and say tough districts as a cop against the against the riot. And some March of the Green type Matt Gaetz person will clean their clocks.
Absolutely destroy them.
And so we've got to figure out what's the option to that. I mean, going back to something you said earlier, because I saw in one of our comments with someone that said the internet is a new TV, about saying like, I don't even own a television set. I had an encounter in Portland with a teacher who was like very kind of, oh, right, for the internet. It's like, I don't read the internet or whatever. And she was like very oblivious to any of the stuff that's happening. It's like, people are upset about school closures. I don't know. People have issues with our anti-bias training and all of the to me, it's one thing to be like, I know that like almost half the country is out to potentially ruin me career-wise, professionally, whatever, over using the right pronouns, about using certain terminology in classes and whatever, teaching certain things, are threatening to go crazy over closures or whatever. But to be completely oblivious means you have no plan. Like, you're just thinking that you live in a world where everyone is like, yeah, well, of course everyone knows that bias training is a great, like I've mentioned it before in certain contexts, in theaters and whatever in the area, they'd be like, okay, well, that's great that you're doing anti-bias training. It is essentially a polarizing issue, but I'm glad we're on that side. It's a polarizing issue. It's like, what? It's like, how do you? We're
going to make any issue a polarizing issue, and
to be oblivious to the fact these are, I guess, because I'm in a world where Republicans are out to kill me, and I guess you're talking about the people who make America great for brunch again types, who just don't want to think about politics. Really, they can just not think about these things, and it won't be an issue, and it's never going to be an issue, and the wolves aren't coming after him. It's like, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out like, oh, that, and I still regret having spent time in a late, almost 20 years ago, where my awareness of Fox News was just Jon Stewart making fun of people on Fox News. Instead, I should have been watching it, or at least being aware that this is radicalizing a generation, radicalizing people to literally die because they're not taking, they won't take a vaccine. We're at 42, and we actually promised, based on our YouTube title, that we would discuss the Supreme Court nomination.
So Susan Collins is very upset about. She's very concerned that, unlike Trump's choices and everyone else's choices, Biden's pick is going to be political. Because he said he would, nominate a Black woman at the behest, because James Clyburn, like, it was all, the whole thing. Like, James Clyburn was like, hey, we'll get behind you if you say you're going to nominate a Black woman to the Supreme Court. And, that seems like a great idea. Every other, like, so many other presidents have done that. They've said, like, I'm going to, nominate a woman. I'm going to nominate a Black person to the Supreme Court. But, like, if Joe Biden does it, they're like, that is political.
Oh, yeah.
We're not sure in what capacity, but it's political and therefore bad.
And I'm writing about this for tomorrow. I mean, for Reagan, it was clearly political. Someone in his administration said it will make them look good, and all sort of, and same with, Trump said it outright. And that's all, it's all bullshit. Susan Collins is a good artist. We get that. But
She's setting up her vote against, is what I.
She's setting up her vote against. But what's fascinating to me is that, like, it is the most political. If you're so you and I, we talk about our careers, like in a certain vague sense of our lives, who the president and who the Senate is will affect us, affects everyone, right? But it's not literally like, oh, if Clinton wins, I might get a lifetime, get like the advancement of my career depends upon who is becoming president. And now more so than ever, who's in charge of the Senate, because either way. So the idea that judges are somehow oblivious to that Amy Coney Barrett wasn't going for Trump to win, like, and who blames her? It's like she knows she wasn't on anywhere on Clinton's list. We know those lists are political, and they've argued no more suitors after George H.W. Bush nominated Souter, believing that he would be a conservative. He had played the game of not being openly out with opinions, and then he wound up siding reliably the liberal wing. So then it's like, no, we're just going to get our Federalist Society fold. I often think that the best contrast is not necessarily it's insulting that Thomas replaced Marshall, but the interesting contrast is Thomas with Souter of Bush's choices, because it was clearly like, we're not even going to risk it. This is the biggest hackety hack partisan hack we can get. So we can. Of course, that's the case. I have somewhat complicated opinion about Biden saying overt. Everything Republicans have said is bullshit about affirmative action or whatever. I mean, I feel like he walked into that rake by doing it, and so he's going to get the no, and there's a chance.
I think strategically he kind of had to, because he needed that. He very much if he hadn't have been backed by Clyburn, we don't really know what would have happened. Sure. He was behind.
Well, yes, I think that reflects to me the larger problem with the Democratic coalition and how the leadership does not reflect the base, because it's not like, we understood why Trump picked Pence, why Romney picked Ryan, while McCain picked Palin and stuff like that. Like, even beyond picking a woman to counter Hillary Clinton thing, it was like, here's the demographic reasons why this person connects with the base. We don't have to say it. And certain things are sort of understood. It's kind of like, okay, you elected me, I'm of course going to pick this crazy ass Jeff Sessions who's going to bring Stephen Miller. This is what my administration looks like. But because of Democratic leadership being so disconnected from the base, where traditionally Black people, gays, lesbians, we turn up and maybe get like a cookie afterward for voting. It's never like understood. It's never like a given. Like, well, yes, no one questions. The Republicans, of everyone you're going to nominate, is going to be some right wing, crazy ass Christian fundamental. Like, this is their background. Right.
Yeah. Whereas, potentially a white supremacist, ideally, fingers crossed.
But there's no expectation that because not even with Obama, like Obama's administration was not like obviously it's diverse, but we're talking in a certain way, CW diverse, not like it's not like the Black version of Trump's all white parade where you've got it's not Fat Tuesdays at the Obama White House. And so with Biden has to make that promise, because it's not understood that yes, he's the white guy. So of course his vice presidential pick will be someone, a member of a demo that votes for Democrats 90% of the time. He's only going to win if that demo comes out in huge numbers. Duh. Yeah. And his justices will be from that demo. Duh. And the fact, so to me, I'm just pissed that he has to say it, and that we're in a position where you have to say it instead of just being, motherfuckers, we won. Here's the parade of Black people. It's a million mom march out here of Black people for everything. We're not just coming for 30%. We're coming for everything, every position, because
Yes.
and so you get like white, and so instead you get these white dudes. I mean, Rahm Emanuel, David Axel. It's like, hey, well, we voted. We even though our demo votes for you, like at best 40% of the time, I'm still gonna get myself a nice job in that administration.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm still gonna get. So white dudes are like, yeah, it's gonna be great no matter who wins. And so the fact that it has to be understood or can't be understood, it has to be stated outright, is just frustrating to me. And so that's why
I think because people don't necessarily trust that they are going to do that. Like, it's not.
And there's no reason for them to trust. There's no reason for them to believe that. Like, yes.
There's no historical precedent of that being a thing.
So you can't just even say behind closed doors of Clyburn that, yes, of course, of course I'm going to. Yeah. It's, like when Clinton, there was never like people really thought there was a legitimate chance with Biden that he'd pick Buttigieg. So the ticket would have been like, well, it's still diverse. It's a gay person. And I got that a lot and I respect that, fine. But still, ultimately, it's like two white guys. So it would be like, statistically speaking, nowhere reflective of the primary voting electorate for Democrats, and Democrats will still wind up like, why are we losing Latino voters? It's like, well, where are your Latino, whatever. But so there was a good chance that happening. There was like no one who seriously believed that Hillary Clinton was going to pick Liz Warren or anyone as her vice president. It was like, of course she's going to balance the ticket, even though she herself does not reflect a demo that votes in large numbers for Democrats, white women, despite the beliefs do not. So, okay, don't worry. She doesn't have to say it. She doesn't have to say it. It's like, of course she's going to pick the whitest white guy that she could with Tim Kaine. Yeah. But it's like, she doesn't have to say, if I'm
like, don't worry, this white man will keep me in line.
Well, it's never like she didn't have abortion. Absurd. It's like she didn't have to say, if I'm elected, don't worry, my VP will be a man. Whereas Biden had to make that triumphant statement. She's like, my VP will be a man. Thank you, Hillary. And don't worry, I'm not going to go all Paradise Island on my administration. Yeah. There will be men in my administration. I plan to appoint male Supreme Court justices, some of whom will be white. It's like, oh, so reassuring, Hillary. It's like she didn't have to say that. It's understood. And so that's my position. And I get a lot of Debbie Downerism from people. There are some folks on Twitter, I won't name, I respect them or whatever, and they were like, Democrats.
You have the worst timeline. Like, I'm sorry.
I tended to reflexively like anyone.
You need to let go of some people.
Reflexively followed anyone who would follow me, and that's not always wise. So, but I get folks who are like very much just, we should embrace this moment of joy because we're going to get this black lady in the Supreme Court. It's like, hold up, like, just as my mom always said, like, don't spend that money until the check is cleared and there's no sound of anything. Like, do not be so sure. It's like, well, McConnell has no power. It's like, I mean, look, Manchin and Sinema, they screwed us in other ways, but they've been there for us with judges. Like, because that's the big thing. Everyone reminds us that they've been there with judges. And it's like, oh, well, this is a very big one. McConnell might lean on him because that's all it takes is one of the two of them. And then for Sinema to be like, I would want, because Sinema's very big on this, right? I want voting rights. I want to protect abortion rights. I would love to have a black gal, a fellow sister. On a Supreme, I would love that. Yeah. But this is so unfair and divisive, and maybe if I can't vote for anyone unless there was like at least a few guys or girls.
Again, it's like me with the Gucci Vegas pumps. I'm never going to actually. I wanted them for years. I'm never going to actually buy them. I even saw it's never going to happen because I can't walk in them and they are too expensive. Like,
so, but hey, look,
she wants
cinema and
wants a lot of things that she is never actually going to make any effort to get, because she doesn't actually care that much.
No. And she loves being a maverick because she's misinterpreted John McCain's career. Her belief, so everything kind of comes down on those two.
Yeah.
Because
by the way, I would just like to issue a big congratulations to Joe Manchin on the windfall sum that he got from a Republican donor, $5,000. He's got the maximum. The guy's going to throw him a fundraiser for destroying Biden's agenda. So really, congratulations to him. Like, well,
it's either like you're, like Ted Cruz, right? So Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, they're getting money for, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, you're getting money for doing something, right? Like, to me, it just feels like you're the guy, you're Paulie in The Godfather, right? You're the person who's just taking money and doing, it just seems like no one likes that guy, right? Like, that's what bothers me about Manchin. Like, what? And maybe because I live too much, I write fiction or whatever, I'm always kind of like, I never understand. I'm just like, well, what character in anything?
Like, he's supposed to be the villain.
Like, don't you get that you're the bad guy? Like, or as the meme says, are we the baddies? Like, don't you get that you've been paid off? The guy's like, yes, you sabotage.
Thank you for your service. But like, I feel like Manchin is almost like the most like blatant about all of that. Like, more so than any other politician. He's like, these people, he's like, I would like to be rich. I want to stay rich. I want my, coal company to do well. I want Republicans to give me money. I like money. Let's not do anything to hurt my daughter and her ability to, charge $9,000 for an EpiPen. Like, that's very clearly like his entire agenda. Like, so I don't. Like, he's been clear on that, and people apparently this is, what the people want.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're great. We need to be grateful to him because we wouldn't, and it's our fault, it's liberals' fault for not getting these moderate candidates over the finish line in North Carolina, and Susan Gideon, who I don't know how she lost that. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I don't know how she lost to Susan and Collins. That's its own thing. Biden lost in North Carolina.
Weird. I mean, Democrats do not want to admit the amount of weirdness that is in New England at all. But Maine is weird. I love New England. I'm from New England. Maine is fucking weird. Run a liberal-leaning independent there. They'll be thrilled.
I agree with you. Independents are the best thing in New England. Not quite New England, but Vermont. I mean, it's interesting that people also kind of take the approach that Vermont is like, like some sort of liberal utopia. So Sanders winning there is no big deal. Like,
it's totally
whatever. And even Warren in Massachusetts, like, well, Republicans do win statewide there. So it's not a given that someone other than Sanders, a respectable.
The town I grew up in was like 99% Trump or something crazy like that. Like, small town Massachusetts is not what people think it is. And do not even get me started on New Hampshire. Like, but
yes, well, yeah. I mean, so I am optimistic that we will get it's just that this will be a brutal and terrible kind of. It's so I read these articles of just like Republicans aren't going to put up much of a fight over this thing, and it just seems like, of course they are. They always do. Like, stop thinking
on principle.
They will break. So a couple of things they can do. They can obviously delay by certain way, like obviously if you kill a nomination enough times, you can perhaps delay it till after the election. That's an extreme scenario, but enough of just. I mean, again, it goes back to me, the voting harder thing. To me, it's like, if you really, for this Black woman, who we know Republicans have been almost coming out saying we're going to do the biggest hit job or whatever, you should try to do the drive-through confirmation process that Barrett had, in and out. Like there's no game. Like, you know, Feinstein's talking about, let's go through the process. What process? No one's mind's changed. No one's gonna ask like legitimate questions. You know, we've seen John Kennedy be racist to you know, so it's just why do you want to set up for the case of institutionalism this woman up for this so much abuse that she's going to receive when you could just like go her in and out and you know, again, it goes back to like with Kavanaugh, those folks were like, Republicans didn't just say spike the football after that. They're like, how dare you make this credibly accused
man suffer.
Like, we are coming after you. We will never forgive and forget. And I feel like what I don't want is to have a woman, even if it goes successfully, be battered and bludgeoned and smeared for months. And then, you know, when she gets confirmed and everyone's like, Manchin Cinema came for us, democracy. It's like, okay, well, I
wouldn't trust them to do shit right now. Like, honestly, like I like.
Yes, I mean, you know, this is it won't be a bipartisan vote as long as they're understanding of that. You know, I'm often lectured that I don't understand politics as well as our professional political class, and Biden's a genius and Pelosi's all these folks are geniuses. But something Biden said about like, we're going to get feedback from Republicans as well. And I was just sort of like, I don't know. I'm someone who just finds the sort of that just disingenuous or clueless. So I kind of respect Republicans who are more just like, well, no, we're going to put in Barrett. This is who we're going to put in. Like, why do you want my feedback? Why do you want me there? Here's the judge I want. They're going to be, here's everything evil they believe and will do. And that's what I want. And so it's just like it's like if you're, you know, if I bring you over to my like, what should we have for dinner, Robyn? I want to get your input because it makes me feel good to get your input. And you tell me all this stuff. And it's like, no. This is what I want. This is what we're going to do. Yeah. It just makes me look an asshole. Like I wasn't really interested. And if I actually do wind up doing all this stuff, then it's like, well, no, you should not. After 3 of the biggest right-wing hacks, we should not be moderating our pick. You need to put in a 22-year-old Angela Davis clone, and
she's a little older, but I would love it if you nominated Angela Davis herself. That would be like please do that. Yes. I grew up with a picture of her on my wall, so that is like, because I had a normal childhood.
Oh, she's wonderful. So
like, that would be my dream. I am in favor of the idea some people had of nominating Anita Hill. That would also bring me a good amount of joy. That would make me happy, especially because one of my biggest issues with Biden was the Anita Hill thing. That would be a very good end to that whole story.
People have trouble comprehending that. Like, wait a minute, but how did that happen? Didn't Democrats control the Senate? It's a different time.
I think a lot of the problem.
A chumpier time.
I think a lot of the problem is that, like, you know, our perspective is very, very much informed by who we hang around with and who we talk to on a regular basis. And like, you know, who we're like, I talk to you probably more than anyone I'm not related to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, at least during the pandemic, I'm like cumulatively. But I feel like a lot of the people that, you know, Biden talks to and that people in his administration talk to, like, they're all people who live in Washington, are, you know, maybe Democrats, but they're also like, I want to make sure that, like, if I vote for you, you're going to let the Republicans keep you in line. And so they want to say, like, you know, we're going to control let Republicans control our, you know, worst impulses and everything. And in a way that's like, you know, sort of like selling in a way that is unappealing to people. Like, I don't Like,
Yeah,
it's like saying, I know
yeah.
you won't like this and it's really expensive, but I was going to show it to you anyway.
No, I feel
Like,
like there was no one. There was like only by accident in the Trump administration, apparently, like so Olivia Troy and
yeah,
Miles Taylor, like people who were trying to keep them doing stuff illegal and racist
yeah,
and so forth, but only by accident. It wasn't just like, oh, it wasn't like they pointed Democrats specifically to counter it. It was just sort of like they
yeah,
were Republicans who had something resembling of human soul and were like, oh no, you can't do that. So that's been the challenge. I mean, with the Anita Hill thing was always strange to me because growing up, obviously in a Black family, but in a Black community, no one liked that asshole. Everyone believed in Anita Hill.
yeah.
So it felt
I
like
was so surprised when I found it out,
it felt like when there was like, oh, and the concern expressed was that if you tank this Black man's nomination, it will hurt you politically. The Democrats politically amongst Black people was like, which Black people are you talking to? Not us, because
Yeah,
we believe the Black woman, because Anita Hill is in fact Black and a
yeah.
woman, and also again a more important demo, frankly. And
But
so
the people they
how
were talking
was
to
treated,
were probably more well-off Black men. Like, that's probably
sure,
who were
perhaps,
like
yeah.
more likely to be able to identify with Clarence Thomas
or
than with
Jenny
Anita
or,
Hill.
or Jenny Thomas's types or stuff like that.
Yeah,
So that was sort of the great, he was certainly unfit, unqualified, and that was certainly the sword to take him out on just from a practical level.
yeah.
And to not use it will always seem strange. It was just like you should not have been on the court. So to get
Oh,
anyone else,
no.
you would have been someone better. It'd been like, Roberts, because Clarence Thomas himself was a beneficiary of affirmative action. I mean,
Hmm.
Bush should not say, "I will pick a Black man to replace Marshall." It was just, this will make it easier, and it did. Except that same strategy won't work for Republicans, where they don't care about looking racist, and they're going to flip
Yeah,
it out on Biden that he's the real racist. He's the one who's made this political, because I think it does. They believe they can push on that wound, which is that he can't let it be understood that he's going to reward Black women
yeah,
because they're the demographic, or Black people in general. You just lean on it to make it look bad. And my concern was that a lot of the never Trump, so the I think Newsweek described it as Biden's media allies, and it's all these never Trumpers like Charlie Sykes and
hmm,
Josh Barrows and whatever, and they of course don't approve of restricting it to Black women. So that is a concern I have, if the idea is that the people in the carvels and the outside, the people advising the president will be, oh, well, maybe this is very divisive, we're in trouble. Black ladies will always show up. Maybe
hmm.
we can do something that will make this bipartisan. I don't, I don't want to borrow trouble. Maybe they will stick through it. Maybe everything, but to me, it's still like a lot of things need to go right for this to happen,
Yes.
as opposed for me that what I'm seeing of just like, this is a slam dunk and let's just relax and go to brunch and we're going to get Black lady in the Supreme Court. That seemed very strange for me. So what else is going on? It was a Joni Mitchell and Spotify, right? Like you were writing up
Yes.
that yesterday.
Yeah, no, I love Joni Mitchell. I love her so much. Yeah, no, it's the whole like her and Neil Young thing, striking out against Joe Rogan, which, like, good for them. They both had polio growing up. They, are into vaccines. I was a little bit weirded out. If you want, I'm not weirded out. I found it a little bit surprising coming from Joni Mitchell, who again is my favorite, because she is a little, she thinks that she has Morgellons. So like,
Could you explain that for I looked that
Morgellons
up.
is a thing.
It's something, so it's psychosomatic. It's not a
Yeah. Um, I'm always afraid to talk about it because people always come and like scream at me about that. Like more so than they do when I talk about the death penalty, because people love the death penalty. But like basically people think that there are fibers coming out of their skin and like sores, but like basically they're picking at their skin, and the things from the fibers from their clothing are getting into it. And so that they have like internet support groups and stuff, and it's a
So
very odd thing, and
psychological.
scientists are like, no, this isn't real. We've looked at your fibers. They're just clothing fibers. You're not growing them. Like, and so Joni Mitchell thinks that she has that. And,
But she could also say, I have this, and even I will take the
yes,
vaccine.
exactly. Exactly. Even she is trusting the science in that scenario. Although this is the thing, everyone here is actually picking and choosing when they believe doctors and when they believe scientists and everything. Because, like, the anti-vaxxers they're still getting their medications. They're still like going to the doctor for other things, but they think that the doctors and scientists are lying to them about like literally this one thing, and they're all in on it.
Yes.
Like,
It's something as an atheist very fascinating about religious people, or certain types of religious people, because the gentleman in Washington who passed away was like, he didn't trust the vaccine, and he was praying to God for a sign, and he should take it, and none materialized. And I was like, well, we originally believed that there was original concern that there would never be a vaccine, or that the world isn't like Star Trek again, where you can cure rapid aging and de-evolution and within 40 minutes. Like, it takes a while. So the idea that they were able to have a vaccine within months is, dare I say, miraculous. But it seems like a lot of religious people don't look at, oh, this itself is a miracle. I mean, there are people who will do that, like rappers who like, I won this award because of God or something, which is okay.
My nanny thinks everything is a miracle. It's everything. Oh, Dee, it's a miracle. Oh my God. It's great.
It's a great way of looking at the world, Robyn. I wish I could. I used to be snotty about the miracle of childbirth, because like, how many people have given birth to talking about? But as I've gotten older, I've been more like, yes, if you want to see that there's a miracle, why should I make it is that idea of like someone who looks at the ocean or the skies and to sort of think, oh, it's so miraculous this exists, where you can kind of explain, well, here's how it happened, and that's how things work.
Well, I think that there are these people who like really do believe that, like, God will give them a sign, or speak to them directly in some capacity, or they just really didn't want to take the vaccine and came up with that as an excuse, which is the direction I would lean in, is what I think was happening. I do, however, just
these people aren't suicidal.
I'm really tired of the whole like, I don't know, maybe whatever. I can't laugh at people for dying. Like, I can't. And I feel sad that people aren't getting vaccinated. Like, it makes me sad. I don't want to laugh at them. I don't. Like, it doesn't, I'm sick of it. I'm mad at them for my own, on some level, but
I don't find it amusing at all. I find it really sad. I mean, there's sometimes a gallows humor when I talk about like, that seems miraculous. What do you mean? But other than that, I just feel it's just very sad. I get angry because there's clearly these people who, it's like the tobacco industry, right? Manipulating. It is possible about a right-wing misinformation campaign, a large one, because there's always been, anti-vaxxers. You've written about them as well. There's always been anti-vaxxers. There's the measles outbreak in California. There's always been that. But at the level we've seen, I think it had to take a coordinated,
absolutely
right-wing to get the level of non-compliance we've seen, and people have died as a result. And I think Laura Ingraham is still like, Laura Ingraham had this guy on her show in October, and he's dead. And it's not like, if you imagine Barbara Walters interviewing someone in the 80s who refused to take, Christian Scientists used to take medication, have their, for their kids or something. and the approach of it, they wouldn't just, but it would come across as, okay, here's the science, we're not going to attack you for belief per se, but this is what could happen. It's not like saying, yeah, this is great, this is a good thing you're doing, and F the bad guys for coming. They wouldn't root you on in 60 minutes for this. And now, Laura Ingraham was like, yeah, like no one had a problem with you being unvaccinated during 2020. It's like, well, there was no vaccine, but okay.
Yeah.
And she's still alive. She's most likely vaccinated.
I'm sure they all are. They all are.
This guy's dead, and it's not she's going to open. She's not going to open her show.
It's a strategic move.
Great.
And I feel like these people, who aren't, big media personalities and everything, are being, manipulated by these people who have an agenda that is like, they're trying to like get people outraged at Democrats. They're trying to elect Republicans. They're trying to get all of this other shit done. And they're using
But I think the anger is what you're saying. When you go back to the anger you're talking about, or the people laughing at, it's interesting because Rand Paul, who's done nothing but misinformation, he was sort of last week talking about how liberals are dancing conservatives' graves and being joyful, which I don't think is necessarily. I mean, there are people doing it. Not everyone. Most people are like just very saddened by it. But that is the tack. I mean, that's what Laura Ingraham will do, right? Like on Monday, I guarantee she won't be like, oh my God, how did I enabled this? He was on my show in October. If he had just, basically his job was on the line.
Well, all of the right-wing articles about this guy are like, look at all the liberals who are being mean about this guy dying. Yeah. Like
that's where they're going to go. So everything is like, how can we make people angrier at liberals because of this? And so to me, it's just like, and maybe this goes back to me, I know it sounds like I'm beating up Democrats again, but it's like, when do we accept that these are not good actors? It's not like, fundamentally disagree on policy. It's just like, I can't deal with liars. I can't deal with people who misinterpret, who demonize others and whatever. And, it's like when Ron Johnson was talking about, who's anti-abortion, but he's talking about why is it anyone's responsibility to take care of other people's kids? Like, openly sociopathic. And I was like, well, what? I just don't fundamentally get. There's a sense of nationalism where I'm supposed to feel somehow we're part of some same team or unity with this asshole or any other folks like him who view the world through a dirty ashtray. And it's like, well, there are probably normal human beings in Canada, Mexico, anywhere, Africa, all of of who just look at so I just want to be part of a nation of people who think that, yes, we should not let children starve, and we should not let
that would be awesome,
and like fundamental basics. And I don't feel a connection just because we have a flag and we're in the same, imperialist region. And but that's me being a commie, I guess. So, well, thanks for joining me again.
And thank you for joining me.
And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Yes. All right. Bye.